So, hello, welcome back to another episode of the Self-Development Tactics podcast. I really am not into recording now. I don't necessarily know why, but yeah, strange days that I'm encountering at the time, strange days that I'm seeing at the time, but yeah, it is what it is. One has to live with things as they are, and I'm gonna do so as well. The divine Augustus, to whom the gods gave more than to any man, never ceased to pray for rest for himself and to seek release from the affairs of state. Every conversation of his kept coming back to this theme that he was hoping for leisure. He would relieve his toils with this sweet, even if illusory, consolation at the thought that one day he would live for himself. In a letter that he sent to the Senate, when he had given an assurance that his retirement would not be wanting in dignity and not be inconsistent with his former prestige, I find the following words. But such things are more impressive in their fulfillment than in their promise. Yet my deep desire for that time, which I have long prayed for, has led me to anticipate something of its delight by the pleasure of words, since the joy of that reality is still slow in coming. Leisure seemed such a desirable thing that, because he couldn't enjoy it in reality, he enjoyed the thought of it in advance. He who saw that the world depended on him, and him alone who determined the fortunes of individuals and nations, he was happiest in looking forward to that day on which he would lay aside his greatness. He knew by experience how much sweat was wrung from him by those blessings that gleamed the world over. He knew the scale of the hidden anxieties they wield, forced to contend in arms first with his fellow citizens, then with his colleagues, and finally with his relatives. He shed blood by land and sea, driven by war through Macedonia, Sicily, Egypt, Syria, and Asia, and almost every known land. He turned his armies to foreign wars when they were weary of slaughtering Romans. While he was pacifying the Alps and subjugating enemies embedded in the heart of the peaceful empire, and while he was extending his boundaries beyond the Rhine and Euphrates and Danube, in the city itself, Murena, Caepio, Lepidus, Ignatius, and others were whetting their words against him. He had not yet escaped their intrigues when his daughter and so many noble paramours, bound by adultery as if by an oath of allegiance, kept causing alarm in his now failing years, as did Iulus, and a woman once again posing a threat with her Antony. He had cut away those sores, limbs, and all, but others kept growing up in their place, as if overburdened with blood. The body politic was always hemorrhaging somewhere. That is why Augustus prayed for leisure, and why he found relief from his labors in hoping for it and thinking of it. This was the prayer of the man who could grant the prayers of other men. And to follow it up with some thoughts of mine, saying, and he found relief from his labors in hoping for it and thinking of it, which is definitely something that I've seen as well. When I'm having something to look forward to, when I am having something in mind, things are better and things are actually quite good, but when it is not the case, then things are not as good as they could be. Like, it is a very strange thing and a very strange thoughts in itself, quite, because like, why do I find relief? Why do I find I don't know, why do I feel well when thinking about something that is gonna be happening? I mean, I know the whole fact that having something to look forward to, according to Viktor Frankl, is something that's incredibly important. But, yeah, like, why? Why though? And why even to such an extent that it might just only be about thinking of it, not necessarily actually having it, but thinking about it. But the problem then is, when you are at this point, then first of all, there's nothing to look forward to anymore. And second of all, it is actually not as good as one imagined it to be. Marcus Cicero was storm-tossed among the likes of Catiline and Clodius of Pompey and Crassus, declared enemies on the one side, doubtful friends on the other. He was buffeted along with the ship of state, which he tried to keep steady as it was going down, but he was finally swept away. He was neither at ease in prosperity nor capable of withstanding adversity. How many times does he curse that very consulship of his, aid which he had enthralled, not without reason but without ceasing? How pitiful are the words that he wrings from himself in a letter written to Atticus, when the elder Pompey had been defeated and his son was still trying to revive his scattered forces in Spain. You ask, he says, what I'm doing here. I'm lingering in my Tusculan's estate half-free. After that, he goes on to other statements in which he bemoans his former life, complains about the present, and despairs of the future. Half-free, Cicero said of himself, but needless to say, the sage will never resort to such an abject term. He will never be half-free, but will always enjoy complete and unalloyed liberty, not subject to any constraints. He will be his own master and tower above all others. For what can there be above the man who rises above fortune? Livius Drusus was a vigorously energetic man who thronged about by a huge crowd from the whole of Italy, had agitated for radical legislation and provoked the kind of troubles the Gracchi had, but he could see no clear way out for these policies which he was unable to carry through, and which once started it was no longer an option to abandon. He is said to have cursed a life of constant activity that he had led from its very beginnings, saying that he was the only person who had never had a holiday even as a boy. While he pled before the juries on behalf of defendants and to exert his special influence in the courts to such effect, in fact, that it's generally accepted that he captured several verdicts against the odds, where with such precocious ambition not find an outlet. You might have known that such premature presumptuousness would lead to disasters both from him and for the state. And so it was too late when he began complaining that he had never had a holiday, since he had been a troublemaker and a burden to the forum from his boyhood. It is unclear whether he died by his own hand. He fell suddenly from a wound to the groin. Some doubted whether his death was self-inflicted, no one that it was timely. It would be superfluous to mention more figures who, although they seemed to others the happiest of mortals, themselves gave true testimony against themselves when they expressed intense hatred for every act of their lives. Yet, by these complaints they changed neither themselves nor anyone else, for after their outburst their feelings reverted to their normal state. In reality, your life, even if you live 1,000 years and more, will be compressed into the merest span of time. Those vices of yours will swallow up any number of lifetimes. To be sure, this span of time, which good management prolongs even though it naturally hurries on, must in your case escape you quickly. For you fail to seize it and hold it back, and you do nothing to delay that speediest of all things, but you allow it to pass as if it were something overabundant that we can get back again. Just another paragraph saying that one should really think about the time he and or she is spending and on which he and or she is spending it. Because in fact, yes, we're not getting back any time. Period. In fact, among the worst cases I count also those who give their time to nothing but drink and lust, for these are the most shameful preoccupations of all. Other people, even if the semblance of glory that grips them is false, nevertheless go astray in respectable fashion. You can cite for me people who are greedy, those quick to anger, and people who busy themselves with unjust hatreds or wars. But all of them sin in a more manly fashion. It is those abandoned to the belly and lust who bear the stain of dishonor. Scrutinize every moment of such people's lives and note how much time they spend on their ledger keeping, how much on setting traps or fearing them, how much on cultivating others or being cultivated by others, how much on giving or receiving bail, how much on dinner parties, which have themselves become business. You'll see that their affairs, whether good or bad, allow them no time to draw breath, which is also not optimal. Like, one should also have some time for himself or herself to, I'd say just think about things. To sum up, everyone agrees that no one area of activity can be successfully pursued by someone who is preoccupied. Rhetoric cannot, nor can the liberal arts, since the distracted mind takes in nothing really deeply but rejects everything that is, so to speak, pounded into it. Nothing is less characterized of a man preoccupied than living. There is no knowledge that is harder to acquire. Instructors of other disciplines are too a penny. Indeed, mere boys have been seen to master some of these disciplines so thoroughly that they could even be masters in the classroom. But learning how to live takes a whole lifetime, and you'll perhaps be more surprised at this. It takes a whole lifetime to learn how to die. So many men of the highest station have set aside all their encumbrances, renounced their wealth, their business, their pleasures, and right up to the very end of life they have made their sole aim to know how to live. Nevertheless, the majority of them depart from life admitting that they did not yet have such knowledge. Still less of those others attain it. Believe me, it is the mark of a great man and one rising above human weakness to allow no part of his time to be skimmed off. Accordingly, such a person's life is extremely long because he is kept available for himself the whole of whatever amount of time he had. None of it lay fallow and uncultivated, and none of it was under another's control. For being a most careful guardian of his time, he found nothing worth exchanging for it, and so that man had enough time, but those deprived of much of their life by the public have necessarily had too little. And with that being said, I'm going to end the episode. See you soon. Bye bye. Stay healthy.